Everyone, welcome to calculating anticipated cash flows. So in this case, we're going to be looking at first quarter sales or Q1 sales. They've given us the Q1 sales, so let's get that set up here. So January, February, March sales. So in January, we have sales of 1.8 million. February, 1.6 million. March, 2.1 million. And we've also given us information of the previous quarter, right? So we have October, we have November, and we have December. Wonderful. So we had sales of 1.9 million, November, just over 2 million, and finally December, 2.2 million. All right, so these are our sales. Now again, you can set yourself up any way you like. I'm going to try setting it up this way. If you want to move the credit or the sales around, that's up to you. So next category, we want to consider, ultimately what we're doing is figuring out how much of those sales are on credit versus cash. So in this case, it looks like, let's take a look at cash sales. So 60% are on cash sales. Okay, so 60% is cash. And what's left? Well, we have 40%. 40% is on credit. Okay, so this is credit. Right? Now with the credit, we have to also now anticipate or understand when we're actually going to be collecting that money. Okay, so when we talk about collecting, that's actual cash that's going to be received in that month. So again, if we in the current month, if we have credit sales, we're not going to get that cash in that month. We're going to get it later on. So that's what this next few categories is going to represent. So 30% in the following month. So basically 30% of that credit, okay, will be collected 1 month later. Okay, then we have 2 months later, we have 50%, okay? So 2 months later, we have 50%, and finally 18% of that cash will be collected in 3 months. Let's just... Okay, so that's important to note. And finally, there's also a default. So there's going to be some, put that down a little bit lower. So 2% is going to be defaulted. In other words, won't be ever paid. There'll be people or companies that will not be able to pay, maybe suppliers or customers, I guess makes more sense. Okay, so now let's move on to our question here. So now we have ourselves set up. First is we're going to take a look at October sales. So of the October sales, how much is actually collected? Again, so how much cash are we going to receive in October? Well, we know that 60% of our total sales is cash. So in that case, for that's how much we know, how much of those total sales is going to be received in October. And we're going to deal with the credit sales now, moving on. So now we're going to take a look at the credit. Okay, well, we need to know that the rest is credit. In other words, 40% of the total sales is credit. Okay, so that's important to note. Now we have to basically figure out of this, where is this credit going to be received in terms of cash? Okay, so we know next month, okay, we're going to get 30% of it next month, okay, and we know that we're going to receive 50% of it in December, okay, and finally we know that we're going to get 18% of it 3 months later, okay, and finally we also know that of that credit, we're going to not receive 2% of it. Okay, so we'll never get that 2%. Okay, so that's going to help us. So hopefully you can see where that money is actually being collected. Okay, so you can see that it's not actually being collected all in November, or sorry, in October. So this all represents our November sales. All right. So let's take a look now. We can sort of enter in our figures here. So the amount collected in November is going to be the 228,000. In December, we have the 380,000. And finally, 3 months later, which is our January, we have that 18% of that is going to be finally collected. And what won't be collected, okay, what's not collected is the amount defaulted, which is the 15,000. All right, wonderful. So we figured out basically when we're going to receive all of our sales, or all the cash from our sales in October. Now let's move on to November. So November, again, we're going to start the process again. The amount collected in November, well, it's going to be 60% of the cash. Okay. So we'll figure that out. Just sort of keep that separate from our credit. Oh, I'm missing a 0. Let that be a lesson to all of us. Okay, so let's move on to December. Or sorry, let's move on. Yeah, so now let's move on to the credit. Okay, so we need to figure out the credit in November. We're still in November, but now we're figuring out the credit. And of course, we can subtract our sales from our cash, or we can just take our 40%. We know 40% is credit. Okay, so now we have to basically figure out when we're going to receive that 820,000. Well, we know we're going to get 30% of it 1 month later. Okay, so 246,000. January. Okay, now we're moving on to January, which is 2 months later, right? That's 50%. Okay, so that's 410,000. I just want to make sure I'm formatted here. One thing you might notice is I am formatted in currency. I want to be formatted in currency. But one thing, if you notice, obviously when you go to currency, it gets a little busy. So first, because we're dealing with nearest dollar, we don't need any decimals. And also, we can actually remove the dollar sign. Okay, make it a little bit cleaner. There we go. Okay, so let's get back on track. So we're still looking at November sales. We want to know our credit. Okay, our credit 3 months later, which is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're going to take that credit, the total credit, and we know that we're going to get 18% of it in February, which is 3 months later. All right. And finally, again, going back, of that 820,000 in credit, well, we're not going to see 2% of it. Okay, we're going to might have some conflict with that, who knows, but we're just going to have to accept our loss. All right, so now we can move on to December. So again, for December, we want to know, well, how much cash is going to be collected from the total sales. So that's the 60%. Okay, so 132 million. Wonderful. So now we have to figure out our credit so we can start sort of, figuring out when we're actually going to receive it. So again, 60% or 40% is on credit. Okay. So now we can move on to the next month. So in terms of when we're receiving it. So of that 880,000, we're going to get 30% of it 1 month later. Then we're going to get 50% of it 2 months later. And finally, we're going to get 18% of it 3 months later. Okay, so we've sort of just gone through it there. Maybe that's not the best way to do it, but whatever works for you. Okay, so now we know we're going to get 264,000 January, February, 2 months later, so 440,000. Okay, and then finally in February, that 18% is the 158,400, and we still have to figure out what happens when we don't get it. And again, you know, I know we're using Excel and we can speed things up, but I make this a nice long video for you. Again, so 2% is our default. Okay, so again, 2% of the credit we're not going to be receiving, so we need to account for that as well. Okay, so let's move on to January. Oh boy, really got to scroll around here. So in January, again, we'll start our process. We have our total cash sales, 60% of it, our total sales, 60% of our cash sales is the just 1.08 or 1,080,000. Okay. And now let's deal with our credit. So again, our credit, 40%. And now we got to sort of figure out when we're going to get that into cash. So we know that we're going to get 30% in February. Okay, so we can put that in, 216. Okay. March is 2 weeks from January, so we're going to take our 50%. Okay, and April, finally in April we have 18%. So we right here. So we don't have April yet, so we gotta make that. But for now, again, just look at it as 3 months away. 18%. Okay, so this is April. $129,000. Okay. And of course, we still have to figure out our loss. 2%, 14,000. Okay, so now we're moving on to February. Okay, so in February, again, what's our cash of that total sales? 60%. Pardon me, 960. And now we need to determine our credit so we can start anticipating when we'll receive it. So we know that we're going to get 30% next month later. So in case this is March. In April, we're looking at, which is the 2 months later, looking at 50%. Okay. And in May, oh goodness, we gotta get to May here, right? So in May, that's 3 months from February, right? So we're gonna take our credit sales and multiply 18% of that. So we know that we're gonna get 115,200. And then finally, our default in February is going to be 2% of our credit sales. Okay, let's move on to March. So March cash sales, 60% of our total sales. 1, 2, 0. Okay, and then we need to figure out credit sales. Okay, so now we know our total credit, and we know that 30% of it will be paid 1 month later. Oh no, what happened here? Oh, sorry, I punched in the wrong. 1, 2, 3. Okay, wonderful. May, again, 2 months later is 50%. Isn't it nice to give you a little grace period there? What a sweet little program. And finally, in June, we haven't even talked about June yet, so let's get that June going. Okay, so again, you can see that our credit sales are relevant in the upcoming quarter, and vice versa. So on. Okay, and finally, what are we defaulting on? Well, that's that 2% of our credit. Okay. All right, so we've done all that and we haven't actually answered the question. Isn't that ridiculous? So we want to know what the anticipated cash inflows are for the first quarter. Okay, so basically we want to know, we're trying to figure out is what is the total cash collected? And we're only dealing with quarter 1, which is nice. So that's what we're trying to determine now in January. So, well, basically we need to add up all the cash. So we know our cash, obviously we're going to collect that. But one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to add the credit, okay? Because credit, of course, is not cash. So we're not actually collecting that. So we're going to collect our cash, and we're going to collect the cash that we received from the previous credit. Okay, and that's going to give us our total. Okay, and again, we can do the same. So, remember cash and all of our other cash receipts. Okay, and that's why if you want, you can consider grouping your cash with the collection, right? So, but just to be clear, so again, we're taking a look at our cash, the money that's actually being collected. Okay, so this is all the actual cash that's being collected in that month. Okay, and that's why we're adding those numbers up. Okay, so again, finally, in March, what is our actual cash inflow? Well, again, basically, the actual cash from the month March sales plus the previous credit cash that's been collected, or the cash that's been collected from the previous credit. Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm sorry, but that's it for this question. Thanks for watching, and happy financing.